Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to this talk about how to be happy, how to bring happiness in your life. Sometimes that people think that what Ajahn Brahm teaches is all very interesting, but what's it got to do with Buddhism? But you should know that the central teachings of Buddhism were something he called the Four Noble Truths. The central teachings of the Four Noble Truths go like this. Well, the way I heard it when I first became a Buddhist, it was a noble truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, and the way to end suffering. When I heard that, I was not impressed. I had enough suffering in life. I did not want to be reminded of suffering. But when I first met my first monk, when I was a student at Cambridge, I saw this monk, and he was happy. I thought, that monk doesn't understand Buddhism. Until after many years, when you looked at those teachings in greater depth, you realize those Four Noble Truths, the central teaching of all types of Buddhism, could be rearranged. And these days I do rearrange them. The first noble truth is called happiness. The second, the cause of happiness. The third, that sometimes we are unhappy. And the fourth noble truth, why we're unhappy sometimes. Now, when you start to define and explain the Four Noble Truths that way, it's quite clear that the Buddhist path, as most religious paths should be, is all about teaching you about happiness and how to be happy. Otherwise, why would you come to any temple? Why would you spend your Friday evening coming here if all I talked about was suffering and misery and pain? And So we're talking about happiness. That's the central teaching of Buddhism. So much so that the Buddha also said, the ultimate happiness, for those of you who know this, in Buddhist language of Pali, he called Paramang Sukhang, is Nibbana, enlightenment. That is the highest happiness of it all, the ultimate happiness. So really the path which we practice in our spiritual life is a path of ever-increasing happiness. Happiness upon happiness upon happiness until you get to the ultimate happiness of Nibbana itself. I always wanted happiness. Sometimes people think, what happiness does a monk have? I'll tell you what happiness, this is my father told me this. He said, what happiness does a monk have? He said, none. He meant N-U-N. He was a naughty father. That's only a joke. But no, a monk has lots of happiness. Look at me. I haven't got any money. I have to work so many hours. At least I've got job security. And my retirement plan is out of this world. But I have happiness. And sometimes that's strange. They say, what on earth is a monk doing being happy? No sex, you can't watch movies, you can't go here and go there. I can't even decide what food I can eat in the morning. No one ever gives me a menu when they invite me to their house for the meal. Whatever they give me, I have to eat it. And if I don't eat it, they get very upset. So whatever it is, they dump it in my bowl. I told people in Australia, I tell you in Singapore, my stomach now does not belong to me. It belongs to you. You can put whatever you like in it. But I'm still happy. Now, why is a monk doing being happy when you haven't got anything which people say gives you happiness in the world? Strange thing that why monks are happy. Now, I'll tell a beginning story. As a monk, you learn happiness, not through theories, but actually through living life. And we're taught as monks to be mindful, to be reflective, and to actually to see in our life what causes happiness and what causes unhappiness. And one of the stories I'll share with you now was a story when I was a young monk. I don't know if I told this story. One of my troubles is I give so many talks. Even I've only been here 2 days, and I've already begun about 4 or 5 talks or 6 talks. I don't know what I said in the last talk. Did I talk about the story of pushing wheelbarrows full of earth? No, okay, I must have given that at school or somewhere. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, now we're back when I was a young monk in the monasteries of Thailand. These were in the jungles, a long way from civilization. It was tough, it was hard. And even though I was from a privileged background in Cambridge, in England, now I had to work really hard. On this particular occasion, we were building the main hall in Ajahn, my teacher's monastery. Now, I know that this is a new hall here, and it's always built on a high place, because that's our tradition to build things on high places. So we had to build a hill out of earth. It was a monk-made hill. Fortunately, I wasn't there at that time. I visited afterwards. And when I visited, there was a lot of earth left over. So Ajahn Chah called all the monks together, maybe about 60 or 70 monks, and he said, "Move that earth." We only had one meal of the day, and it was very, very poor. But nevertheless, from about 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock, all day to about 10 o'clock in the evening, we'd shovel earth, put it in wheelbarrows, and move that wheelbarrow of earth down to the place where Ajahn Chah wanted. We took 3 hard days of labor, sweating, aching, being bitten by mosquitoes, but I had faith. I thought this was good karma, so I kept on pushing those wheelbarrows, but I must admit, when it was all over after 3 days, I was very happy. I thought, wow, we finished it. Tomorrow I can have a rest, I can meditate. That evening, Ajahn Chah thanked us all and announced the following day, now the work was done, he was visiting one of his other monasteries. The following morning, after breakfast, the monk in charge, the deputy monk, he brought all the monks together and said, "I've been thinking, I don't think that's the right place for the earth. Let's move it round the corner." Now that was testing my faith. But I thought, no, I respect that monk too. I'm a Buddhist, I will let go, I will push those wheelbarrows. For another 3 days of hard work, toiling under the hot conditions of a Thai jungle, working so hard, enduring all those mosquito bites. After another 3 days, we'd finished. Now I was really happy, really relieved. We'd moved it and they were happy. But that night, Ajahn Chah came back. And yes, you guess what happened? He got all the monks together and he said, "What did you put it there for? I told you to put it over here. Move it." Another 3 days of pushing wheelbarrows was in front of me. I didn't become a monk to push wheelbarrows. I didn't put on the yellow robes to be exploited like this. We monks should form a union. We should stand up for our rights. Because the senior monks, they didn't push any wheelbarrows, they were just telling us what to do. And so I got very upset. I got very angry. In fact, I started swearing in English. So the Thais couldn't understand. But they did understand, because they see my facial expressions. And one monk came up to me, and he gave me a teaching which helped me for so many years. He came up and told me this. He said, "Pushing the wheelbarrow is easy. Thinking about it is the hard part. Pushing the wheelbarrow is easy. Thinking about it is the hard part." How true that was. As soon as I stopped complaining, as soon as I stopped thinking about it and just pushed that wheelbarrow was lighter. And there was no suffering anymore. It was the thinking which caused me the suffering. Why me? This is unfair. Can't those monks decide what they're going to do? Why did I join a disorganized religion? So, once I stopped complaining, it was easy to do. I pushed those wheelbarrows and it was no problem. I learned a lesson. When I learned, whatever you do in life, thinking about it is the hard part. Doing it is easy. Whether it's giving a talk in public, whether it's going for an exam, whether it's whatever test you have in life, stop thinking about it so much. Just do it. And the talk this evening is sponsored by Nike. You just do it. Now, how much in your life do you think too much? Thinking too much is a great cause of suffering. There's so many things in life you just have to do, so stop complaining. But you know, they only work for a short time. Because later on, I did complain even more about what it was like to be a young monk in Thailand. I was much thinner as a young monk than I am now. When they say that Buddhism is growing in the West, this is what they mean. But my trouble, the reason why I'm fat, it's not I eat too much, I don't worry enough. But no, when I was a young monk, I was so thin. And one of the reasons was, whenever we got any food, it was given to the senior monks first. They took their share and they passed it down the line of monks according to seniority. So by the time it came to me, there was only the remains left, what everyone else didn't want. I thought that was so unfair, because after all those senior monks, they were probably already enlightened. They didn't need nice food. It was me who needed the nice food. I could appreciate it. They wouldn't even appreciate it. Anything would be good for them. And all the senior monks, they'd have all these big cushions. And the junior monks, we had to sit on the hard concrete. And I thought, I was so thin and bony. I was the one who needed the cushions. Those fat monks, they had their own upholstery. And they made us work so hard. And they never did any work. They just sat around talking to people all day. Ooh, it was so unfair. So I complained. And one of the monks said to me, Ajahn Brahm, you've got what we call young monk suffering. When you become a senior monk, you will be fat, you'll have the choice of food, you'll have the biggest cushions. You will not have young monk suffering anymore, you'll have senior monk suffering. And sometimes I do that. I think all those young monks, they don't have to fly all the way to Singapore. They don't have to give talks all day. They don't have to listen to people talking about their children, their marriage, their finances and everything else. I became a monk to get rid of all that stuff. And that's called old monk suffering. Now the point is, you're not getting rid of suffering, are you? In my monastery, some years ago, 2 Thai girls came to see me. They were sisters. So they came for free counseling. You know the reason why monks are good counselors? Because we don't charge. We're cheap. Already that people gave some ang paos from my temple as I came in here. I told them if they don't like the talk, they can ask for the ang paos back. No. When I was doing this, these 2 ladies came to see me. The first one, her problem, they were both sisters, her problem, she was married, she had a husband, she was having a lot of suffering with her husband. He was giving her a very difficult time. She had husband suffering. And when I sort of talked to her about being content, having more loving kindness, whatever it is, then I asked her, sister, what's your problem? And she said, I'm single. I want a husband, I can't find one. I thought of a solution, but they wouldn't buy it. Well, someone had a husband they didn't want. Somebody didn't have one and they wanted one. It was obvious to me. But afterwards I told her, Madam, the one who's married, you've got married woman suffering. You've got single woman suffering. If you get rid of your husband, you won't have married woman suffering anymore. You'll have single woman suffering. And you, if you want a husband, you won't have single woman suffering anymore. You'll have married women suffering. You don't get rid of the suffering, do you? Because that's what happens. People think, oh, when I meet my partner in life, when I meet the one who's made for me, then I'll be happy ever after. Get real. You know what the word marriage means? It actually comes from a Latin word meaning to gamble. It's true. Marriage means to gamble because it's a big gamble. So whatever. When a person gets married, they let go of, they've given up single person suffering, now they've got married person suffering. So all of you who are thinking, I want to get rid of this husband of mine, I want to get rid of this wife of mine, you're not going to get rid of suffering. You're going to just change one type of suffering for another type of suffering. Those of you who are working, you think, oh, I have to work so hard. Oh, I have to get up so early in the morning. Oh, it's just so tough at work. I want to change my job. You don't get rid of suffering. You change this work suffering to another type of work suffering. And if you lose your job, you don't have workers suffering anymore. You have out of work suffering. It's the same when we grow up. Kids, they can't wait to grow up because they got young people suffering. We think, why are they suffering for? Kids have so much fun. You forget, when you were young, you wanted to grow up because you had young people suffering. When you get to be a teenager, you don't have kids suffering anymore, you have teenage suffering. When you grow up to be an adult, you get adult suffering. You don't have teenage suffering or young people suffering anymore. And when you get old, you don't have middle-age suffering anymore, you have old-age suffering. People want to retire and they think, when I retire, then I'll be happy. This because when you retire, it's actually usually the old people go to temples and they go to churches. Look how many people go to temples and churches when they're old. You know why? Because they think, when I die and go to heaven, then I'll be happy. But when you go to heaven, you just get heaven suffering, that's all. You don't get rid of it. Imagine what it's like in heaven. When I was taught about heaven, it was like you eat ambrosia, and you have all these people playing harps all the time. After a while, that will really get up your nose. Harp music again, day after day after day. Ambrosia. Can't I have some noodles? Can't I have a Big Mac? Actually, this happened once. This man was in heaven, and he was having ambrosia. All the people were dressed in white. Even the girls, just white shawls with little rings on their head. The fashion hadn't changed for thousands of years. So he went up to complain. He said, look, why don't we have some proper music up here? I like rock music instead of this harp stuff. Can't we get a few electric guitars up here? He said, all this ambrosia, can't we have a menu? Can't we have some nice noodles from Singapore? Can't we have some nice vegetarian food from Europe? And also, I'm in heaven now, I'm supposed to be enjoying myself. Can't we have people a bit more fashion? And the angel said, look, I'm sorry, we can't do that. It's tradition. And at that time, he got a vision of hell. And down in hell, they had these great rock bands. He saw it down there in his vision. These really cool bands. And the women down there, they were all dressed in beautiful dresses from Milan, great hairstyles. All the men were in Gucci suits. And the food down there was like a 5-star restaurant. And he said, look, that's what they have in hell. Why can't we have better than that in heaven? And up in heaven, the angel said, it's tradition. It's been like this all the time. We can't change it now. Thousands of years it's like this. And the man said, he complained, this is unfair. I want it like it's done. I want good food, good music, nice, beautiful women, and nice, beautiful men. I'm in heaven after all. And all the angel would say, look, if you like it that much, you can go down to hell. And he said, okay, I will. So he went down to hell. And he couldn't see any beautiful music or beautiful girls or wonderful food. These terrible demons with big fangs came along and put him in a big cauldron of boiling oil and started poking him with these forks. He said, hang on, what about my vision? In my vision I saw these beautiful girls, I saw this great music and delicious food. What about my vision? And the demon said, oh, that vision, yes, that's our advertising campaign. Never believe your adverts. So, even in heaven you have heavenly suffering. The point is that in those sorts of worlds, sometimes we look and there's always some type of suffering in our life. When would you ever get happiness? We always think that when I become rich, then I'll be happy. As a poor person, you get poor person suffering. As a rich person, you have rich person suffering. You're not getting rid of suffering that way. But a few times in my life as a monk, when I stopped complaining, actually life wasn't so bad. A lot of times I realized that when I complain, it was my thinking was being negative. Too often in life we think in negative terms. That's one of the great reasons why we suffer. We are complainers. The Buddha called it the fault-finding mind. It's so easy to find fault with life, fault with your partner, fault with yourself, fault with anything. Even up in heaven you can find fault if you look hard enough. Now the point is that really being fair to life? Someone asked me a good question as I came in here. They said, is it just right to be an optimist and think what a wonderful world this is and how great it is? Is that really being real and rational? Is that what happiness is? Being in delusion and fantasy? I said, no, it's not. Well, then should I be a pessimist? Because I read in the newspapers all these tragedies, the war in Iraq, the terrible things which people do, sometimes children getting hurt and abused, cancers in our community, people dying young, all these tragedies in life. How can there be happiness when we have all these tragedies? And I told them the story, well, I should have told them the story. I wanted to expand upon what I said inside today. That very often we can look at the world and see just what's wrong. In brief, I told them the story of my brick wall. Many of you have heard that before, so I'm going to say it very, very brief. Now you want me to say it again? Okay. The story of my brick wall. I told you yesterday that when I became a monk, I had to work hard. When I first went to Australia, we only had very little support. The reason was because people didn't trust us. They didn't know who we were. Who were these guys in brown robes? Were we real monks or fake monks? So for the first year or two, the people looked at us to check us out, as you should do. As they were checking us out, we didn't get much support, but we needed a place to stay. So our monastery, the land which we bought, was empty of any buildings. We spent all our money just buying the land. We had nowhere to stay. My first place where I stayed in that monastery was a door on three bricks on every corner. And the door was bought from a salvage yard. Because I was a second monk, the abbot got the best door, the one which was flat. Mine had ribs on it. Also, the doorknob was in the middle of the door. They had to take the doorknob out, so I had a hole in the middle of my bed. I joked, at least I didn't need to get out of bed to go to the toilet. But the wind would come up in the morning, would come up through that hole. I hardly slept. It was very, very tough those first few years as a monk. And we used to work so hard, many hours a day. I had to learn how to build. Yesterday I said about learning how to do plumbing. I also had to learn how to lay bricks. Laying bricks is not easy. You think all you have to do is put some mortar down, put a brick on top and make it level. But when you put the mortar down, you put the brick on top, there's always one end is higher than the others. So you have to tap that end down. That end goes down, another end goes up. So you have to tap that end down. Then it moves out of line. So you've got to tap it into line again. Then the first end goes up. It takes forever to get that brick straight. But one thing which I had, which all monks have, is patience. Doesn't matter how long it takes, I'm going to make sure that every brick is perfect. So, that's what I did. Every brick I made sure, if it wasn't right, I'd take it off and start again. When I finished my first brick wall, I looked at it and I was so disappointed. I was so shocked. I was so distressed. I'd missed 2 bricks. All the other ones were nice and level, but 2 bricks with this awful angle, and they spoiled the whole wall. I tried to take them out, but the cement was just so hard, they just would not come out. And so I talked to the other monk with me, and I said, can we buy some dynamite? Can I blow up that wall and start again? And he said, no. I wanted to destroy that wall because I'd made a mess of the first building project I did at that monastery. And I was so disappointed. And I saw it every day. Every day I went past that wall. I was so upset as I saw the 2 bad bricks and my mistakes. When visitors came, I always managed to take them somewhere else. So they wouldn't see my mistakes, because your mistakes you're always embarrassed about. But one day, a visitor came. I was with them. They saw that wall. And what they said was, that's a beautiful wall. I said to them, are you crazy? Are you blind? Have you left your glasses in the car? Can't you see the 2 bad bricks? And they said, yes, I can see the 2 bad bricks, but I can also see the 998 good bricks as well. That hit me like a brick. I realized my mistake, not only in that wall, but in life as well. Just too often, all we see is our 2 mistakes, and you become blind to anything else other than what is wrong. That's what was happening to me. Every time I passed that wall, my eyes would just go to my faults, my mistakes. I could not see anything other than my 2 mistakes. Once they were pointed out, I realized for every 2 bad bricks, there was 998 good bricks. I realized in life, every time I saw a tragedy in life, every time I saw someone being abused or hurt, there were 998 times, or probably much more, when people were being kind and caring and beautiful and wonderful and loving and generous and inspiring. But why is it we only see the faults in life? This is a psychology of the mind, which once you understand this, why is it do we always dwell on faults and mistakes? And why is it we can never see beyond the mistakes and faults in life? Most people are actually pessimists. A pessimist is someone like myself in those 3 months who always sees the 2 bad bricks in life. The optimist is the person who only sees 998 good bricks. The realist is one who sees both. Yeah, there are mistakes in life. There's a lot of beauty in life as well. Because I was a CEO of a monastery, a boss, because it was my concern to make sure that monastery was well maintained, the monks were looked after and trained, that everything was done well. Because I was a manager, what does a manager do? But look after the faults and the problems. It came to the point when I wasn't enjoying my monastery anymore. Because every time I was there, some would say this monk had missed the chanting, this monk was not doing the right thing, the gutter was leaking, the wall needed painting. It was always a list of problems and faults. When I saw that, I decided that to change the way I lived in my monastery. I decided that once a week, on every Monday morning, I would deliberately go for a walk in my monastery, deliberately being blind to everything which was wrong and needed fixing and needed done, and deliberately looking for all the things which had been done in the monastery. I went out for looking for what was perfect in my monastery. Because people would come to my monastery and say, "Oh, what a beautiful monastery that is." And I say, "Are you blind? Can't you see that path which needs sweeping? Can't you see that wall which needs painting? Can't you see that gutter which needs fixing? Can't you see that monk which needs fixing?" Because that's all I would see as a manager. Now, I changed. What I did instead was at least once a week, I'd go around there deliberately looking for what was right in my monastery. Because I was too much of a pessimist. Managers are pessimists. They're fault finders. That's their job. That's what they're paid for. But I decided I wanted to look for what's beautiful in that monastery. Once I started looking for it, I could see it, and it was a beautiful monastery. I started to appreciate the place I was living in. Do you appreciate the place you live in? Do you go into your kitchen and look at all the dishes which have been washed? Or do you only see the dishes which haven't been washed? Isn't it wonderful to go back home and see all the dishes which have been washed, all the floors which are clean, and appreciate your home? Now that idea of appreciation, it's not just being an optimist, not being a pessimist, it's being a realist. You look at life and you find, my goodness, there's a lot of beauty in that life. There's a lot of beauty in my home. There's a lot of beauty in Singapore. How many times do I come here and ask people, how's the economy? Oh, not so good. Even when it was booming, oh, not so good. It's always not so good. When is it ever going to be good? When you appreciate it, that's when. So, appreciating things means to see what we already have. It's gratitude. It's a positive attitude. If you can do that, you find you can live with other people. You don't see what's wrong in your wife. How many of you, whenever you look at your partner, your wife, your husband, start to see what's wrong with her? She did this, she did that. And they come and tell me, she did this, she did that, she did something else. He was late at home. What about looking at all the good things he has done? What about looking at the good things she has done and telling him? How many times when you talk to your partner or you talk to your kids, do you tell them what they're doing right? And how many times do you tell them what they're doing wrong? Most of the times you speak to someone is to point out their faults. You take their goodness for granted. That's why you don't see it. That's why you don't have happiness in your relationship. Don't you want to be appreciated? Don't you want all your hard work to be acknowledged? All your sacrifice? All of your care and love? So why don't you tell your partner, thank you for being who you are. Thank you for all the hard work, all the sacrifice. You work so hard for me, for the family, for the house. You try that. It works. Not only does it make them become a much more soft partner and more willing to do more for you, it brings you happiness as well. Because happiness is actually sometimes seeing the full picture of life, which is not that bad. We're learning how to not to complain, learning not just to see the bad side, but to see the positive side of life. Sure, there's wars, but how many places are there no wars? Sure, there's cheats in life, but how many people aren't cheats? I was told this story some years ago. There was an argument in a classroom. The children in the class were getting so upset at each other, about to have a fight, that the teacher called order and told everybody to sit down and gave each one of them a piece of paper and ordered them to draw a vertical line down the middle of that piece of paper. And then the teacher told them, choose somebody someone you really hate, you dislike, you don't like at all, put their name on the top. On the left-hand column, list all the things you hate about them. They just had an argument, and it was very easy for each one, the boys and the girls, to put down the name of someone they didn't like, and to fill that left-hand column with all of their faults. When they finished that left-hand column, the teacher said, right, now that person, list all the things which you like about them. That took a bit longer, but once they started, the kids could actually write what they liked about their enemy. Right, said the teacher, tear that piece of paper carefully down the middle. On the left-hand column, all of the things you don't like, screw that up, put it in the wastebasket. The right-hand column, what you like about that person, go over and give it to them. It stopped the argument, but did more than that, because many, many years later, at a funeral of one of those children, he was a man who'd been in that class as a boy. At the funeral, the wife rose up to give a speech about her husband, to give a eulogy. She was telling about her husband and the things which meant so much to him in his life. And she brought out this tattered old piece of paper. The piece of paper which he got from one of his enemies at that time in his class when he was very young. And his wife said, this piece of paper my husband has been carrying around ever since he was a boy. It was from one of his enemies who wrote down all the things he appreciated in him. And she said, whenever my husband was upset or depressed, he'd always get this piece of paper out and read it. And that would always give him hope. It always eased the pain of his life. It meant so much to him to be appreciated even by an enemy. When she said that, there was about 3 or 4 people spontaneously stood up. They opened their wallets and their purses, and they also took out old pieces of paper. They too had kept those pieces of paper, which meant so much to them. They were also from the same class. They'd come to the funeral to say goodbye to a friend, and the wife had pointed out something which they had kept secret, and now they acknowledged that praise they got from their enemies had kept them going through so many tens of years. A little bit of praise creates a lot of happiness. All it's doing there is focusing on the positive side of life. Why do people complain so much? Surely can't we be more appreciative of the people in our life? Because once we become more appreciative of the people in our life, then we become more appreciative of ourselves. Do you like yourself? Or are you a complainer? Do you only see the 2 bad bricks in your life, the things which have gone wrong? Or can't you see those other things which are beautiful? Anyone who has a cancer, is that all you see? The disease which is in your body? Can't you see more than those 2 bad bricks? There's more to life than disease. Cancer is only a word. Life is a whole story. When you see more, then you can take these things much more in your stride. In fact, as I said to a person this morning, you can even enjoy your cancer. How can you do that? When I told that story of the brick wall many years ago, it was actually at a cancer group in Perth. One of the men came up to me afterwards and said, that's a very interesting story, Ajahn Brahm, about the 2 bad bricks. Please don't feel so upset, because in the professional building industry, all bricklayers make mistakes. And then he told me a secret. He said, in the building industry, when we make a mistake like that, we tell our clients It is a feature. And we charge them an extra $3,000 for it. It's the only building like this which has got this feature. All of the features, even in this building, probably started as mistakes. Now that's a beautiful ending to that story, because the mistakes in life, the cancers, do become the features of our life. When you see a sunset, if there was no clouds in the sky, it's never beautiful. If the sky was perfect, the sunset wouldn't be enjoyable. You need a few clouds, a bit of dust, some imperfection there to spread the light from the setting sun into beautiful streaks of orange and purple, glowing gold in the dying light. That's what makes it beautiful. A little bit of imperfection. Do you really want life to be perfect, with all the bits straight? I will tell you, there'll be no happiness in such a world. There'll be no beauty. There will be no reason for those wonderful qualities of the heart called compassion and love. What I've been saying so far is learning how to embrace the bad bricks of your life. Learning to see beyond the faults which create unhappiness in life. To see life in a greater fullness and appreciation. It's nothing different than love. What is love anyway? It's not liking somebody. Anyone can do that. What love is loving things which sometimes you don't like. How can you do that? How you do that is in the words of my father, who took me aside as a 16-year-old. He said to me, "Son, whatever you do in your life, the door of my house is always open to you." His house was a very, very small apartment. It was nothing much to open the door for anyone to. But what he meant was not his house. What he meant was to say, "Son, whatever you do in your life, the door of my heart will be open to you." That's called love, unconditional love. I was saying to that wall with all your two bad bricks, the door of my heart is open to all of you. What I was later to say, life with your cancers, with your deaths, with your wars, with your disappointments and your joys. Life, the door of my heart is open to all of you. I was opening my heart to life in its fullness. Not just that part of life you like, but to all of life. I was appreciating the harshness of life as its features. What really makes life beautiful. Sometimes people can't understand that, but it's true. I said yesterday the simile of dog poo. Sometimes we think the tragedies of life. My wife dies, my child gets run over by a lorry, I lose my job. There are tragedies in life, real things which hurt. But whenever you get a tragedy in life, it's called fertilizer. It's like cow poo, or even worse than dog poo, elephant poo. Have you ever seen how much an elephant lets out of its backside? Imagine you're standing underneath it. That's what life is like sometimes, getting dumped on by an elephant. That's sticky, that's smelly, and that's very, very offensive. It's like getting cancer, it's like losing your job. It's like someone leaving you who you love. All those other tragedies in life, that's being dumped on by a big elephant. But what do you do with elephant poo? You take it to your garden, you dig it in. If you complain about it and you're stuck with the dog poo, oh, why did the elephant dump on me? Why did it do it to me? If you just stay with it, you're going to stink. When you carry around dung, when you carry around elephant poo, you find you lose a lot of friends. And that's when people get negative about life. It's not the way to deal with the problems of life. Instead, we dig it in to our garden. Whatever happens to you in your life is fertilizer for your compassion. It is fertilizer for your wisdom. You dig it in to your life. When you dig in the fertilizer of unhappy situations, painful experiences, great disappointments in life, all of that is fertilizer for you. If you know how to use it, you find in a few years, could be months, could be many years, you've dug in all of that dung, all of that smelly, offensive elephant poo. And in the place of the poo, you've got this beautiful garden. Your flowers are more fragrant, more full than the ones next door. And it's not just for your enjoyment and benefit, because the scent of the flowers goes all along the street, shared and enjoyed even by passers-by. If you have fruit trees in your garden, the fruit from your tree is so much more abundant and sweet than anything you can buy in the shops. As I said yesterday, the sweetness all comes from the poo. And you share all of that fruit with others. In that simile, the flowers stand for your compassion. The fruit stands for your wisdom. The more poo you have in life, the more compassion and wisdom you have. So when you really understand about life, hooray, whoopee, more poo for my wisdom, more dung for my compassion. Give me more. You can do that. And why not? If you have the disappointment, you lose your job, or your wife leaves you, you fail in your exams at university or school, you get a cancer, the person you love most in life dies, what are you going to do about that? Don't carry around the poo in life. There's too many people doing that, and it smells. Dig it into your garden. You can grow so much wisdom and compassion. And I mean that. If you've really been through it, if you've been through a divorce, if you have lost your job, if you know what depression is like, if you've gone through a cancer, you are the one who can put your arms around somebody else and say, I know. You're the one who can really help. Some years ago, I was teaching in prison. I love teaching in prisons. It's a strange thing that in prisons you find the most honest people in the world. In real life, people will never tell you the truth. They will deceive you sometimes. They will say one thing, they're not really being honest and open. But when you go to prison, in Australia anyway, everyone, as they say, straight up, straight down, they tell you how they feel, and they will not put on a face. It's a place of surprising honesty in a jail. When I went to this one jail, just before teaching the meditation, two of the prisoners, I always remember one of the prisoners' name, he was Nick. He said, come over here, Brahm, come over here, I want to show you something. What had happened, that Nick and this other man were in jail for importing drugs into Australia. They got involved in drugs when they were young. To make money for their habit, they'd imported drugs. They were caught, they were sent to jail. At a nearby school, A teacher was trying to help the children not get into such a problem with drugs anymore. She wanted to do a session of warning her children of the dangers of drugs. She talked to her headmaster, and they thought that maybe they'd get some professor from the university or some expert from the government. And they realized they could find a much better expert than those. They rang up this prison and they invited 2 prisoners to come to their school and teach the children what drugs really mean. What better experts can there be than those who have actually played that dangerous game, got caught, and suffered the consequences of their actions? I really praise that school for having the courage and the guts to invite prisoners to teach their 10 or 11-year-old children. Those prisoners went there. They taught from the heart. It wasn't theory. They'd been there. They'd done that. They'd suffered. They had that done, and they knew how smelly it was. So when they taught these 10 or 11-year-olds, the 10 and 11-year-olds were listening because they had the experts, the ex-drug addicts who told them what happens when you start playing around with those things. Not only was it a marvelous thing for those children, Nick said, come over here, a few days later when I visited the jail. The following morning, the teacher, appreciating that Nick and his friend coming to teach her kids, said, let's send some cards to Nick and his friend. These 10 and 11-year-olds in their art class have made these little cards saying, Nick, we hope you get out of jail soon. Nick, we wanted to put a file in the cake we're sending to you, but teacher wouldn't let us. Nick, please come and visit us when you are released. Nick, we hope it's not so bad in jail for you. All these little cards of kindness from these children. And when Nick took me over to these cards, which were displayed on the wall of the prison school, he burst out crying. This hard drug dealer and addict just wept. It's wonderful seeing a man cry like that. He wept because now he had the chance to help. He knew what it was like. He felt he wanted to stop other people going the same road he'd gone to. Now he had the chance. And my goodness, he was good at it. I'm sure that those children probably never went near drugs after Nick and his friend gave them a realistic description of what it's like from the heart. What a wonderful thing that was. But only they could teach like that because they knew what they were talking about. Sometimes the suffering and pain in life enables us to really have compassion and wisdom for others. So when those things happen to you, if they do in life, don't just think 2 bad bricks, something we need to destroy in our life. These are your features, things which can make you a beautiful, wonderful, compassionate, wise person. After a while, the suffering in your life becomes happiness. It's what makes you wise, compassion, and happiness. So we don't just go around complaining about life. We get in there and dig it in and make something out of it. We become happy people. I have a very hard life as a monk, but I turn it to my advantage. And I create happiness no matter what I have to do. Do you like going to the dentist? I love going to the dentist. They've got the most comfortable chairs you could ever find, especially for a monk. Or I can lie down there for hours and hours. You can do it with my teeth. I'm just enjoying lying in your nice, comfortable chairs. You can always find something positive to enjoy if we don't just look about, what happens in the drill going into our mouth. We think too much. I never mentioned this before yesterday, but fear is thinking too much. I'm going over time here, but I can't resist telling this story of one of the people staying in our monastery has very bad teeth. Our monastery being about 60 kilometers from the centre of Perth, he didn't like going to the dentist. It was just too much trouble. But he managed to find one dentist who would take out his teeth without anaesthetic. He didn't like using the anaesthetic. And so he found one dentist. He became famous amongst all the dentists in Perth. This was one of the people in my monastery who could have his teeth taken out without anaesthetic. Could you do that? He did one better. Because one day he decided it's too far to go 60 kilometers to have his tooth taken out. He decided to take it out himself. He took out his own tooth. We saw it. He was by the workshop with a pair of pliers, with a bloody tooth in the grip of the pliers. I asked him, how do you do that? When I ask these questions, I know the answers, because I know my mind. I know fear, I know pain. What he said was this. He said, when I decided to take out my tooth by myself without anaesthetic, without going to the dentist, that didn't hurt. The plan didn't hurt. When I walked to the workshop, that didn't hurt either. Even when I chose the pliers, that wasn't painful. When I put the pliers on my tooth, that didn't hurt either. When I wiggled it, that hurt for about 2 seconds, that's all. And then the tooth was out. After it out, it hardly hurt at all. It was only 2 or 3 seconds of pain. What's the big deal? Now, if that was you, even before you picked up the pliers, it would hurt like hell. You can see how thought makes it hurt. This is going to hurt, this is going to hurt, and it's already started hurting. Thinking is what creates most unhappiness in the world. So at least actually see if you can have wise thinking. Instead of just looking at the 2 bad bricks, look at the other bricks as well. Instead of thinking this is going to hurt, this is going to hurt, this is going to hurt, live more in the present moment. It hasn't hurt yet, so who knows? Leave it alone. Don't predict the future. Leave it alone. Instead of thinking, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. Doing it is easy. Thinking about it is hard. Just do it in life. And whatever happens to you in life, you can always make use of it. It's always fertilizer for your wisdom, for your compassion. This is being realistic. It's making use of life. It's embracing life. It's loving life. It's saying, life, the door of my heart's open to you. It's not life is the problem. It's the way we look at it is the problem. I'll finish with one story. Again, a prison tale, which I love telling as well. At this time, I was already abbot, so busy, come to Singapore and other places. One of the other monks had to go to jail in my place. One day, after giving the talk in jail, the prisoners invited the monk for tea. He stayed a bit longer and drank tea with the prisoners in this high security jail. And the prisoners started asking him, what's it like being a monk in your monastery? What do you do? And so he told him, we get up 4 o'clock in the morning. 4 o'clock in the morning, they said. Even in prison, we don't have to get up till 6. Can you have a cup of tea? He said, no tea. You have to meditate on the cold, hard floor until maybe about 6:30. Sometimes you get a breakfast, sometimes you don't. They don't even feed you a breakfast sometimes. No, sometimes not. Then what do? Then you have to work really hard for 2 or 3 hours. And then you have one meal, all in the same bowl. Everything gets mixed up. The ice cream goes on the curry. The custard goes on a spaghetti. What, they don't even give you separate plates? There's no choice? What happens next? Can you watch the TV? No TV. Music? No music. Sex? Oh, certainly no sex. Can't you even watch a movie? No, it's just meditating all afternoon. What about sport? No sport either. What time do you go to bed? 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, that's all. Do you have nice beds? No, sleep on the floor. they were disgusted. They were amazed. They were just so upset that their friend, who came all this way to teach them meditation, had to live in such squalor and hardship that one of them said, forgetting where they are, "That's terrible in your monastery. Why don't you come in here and stay with us?" They invited the monk to stay in prison because prison was more comfortable than my monastery, and it is. That's why I'm never afraid of going to jail. I get more to eat in jail. I'll probably get a choice as well. I can watch the TV in jail. So why is it in my monastery in Perth there's a waiting list of people trying to get in? Why? Why is it in jail? People are trying to get out. Fascinating question, isn't it? Why do people love come to visit and stay in my monastery? And why do people, even though the jail is so comfortable, want to escape? The reason is that being in prison, it doesn't depend upon how comfortable or uncomfortable it is. Any place you don't want to be is your prison. If you're in a relationship you hate, you feel like you're in prison. If you're in a job where you really don't like it, your job is a prison. If you're in a body which is hurting or sick with cancer and you don't want to be there, it becomes a prison for you. If you're in a body which is disabled and you don't want to be there, your body becomes a prison. If you're in a situation, a life situation which you hate, you've had a tragedy, and you don't want it, your life becomes your prison. It doesn't matter what you're experiencing in life. Whenever you don't want to be there, then you're in jail. In a monastery, it's uncomfortable, it's harsh, it's austere. If you want to be there, you feel free. If you want to escape from prisons of life, be content with your partner, then you'll feel free. Be happy to be in your job, then your job is not a prison for you anymore. Even if you can be content with your cancer, you're free. This is fertilizer for my wisdom, my compassion. Thank you for visiting me. The door of my heart's open. Come in. If you can be content to live with the tragedy of your life, then you are free. You don't need to change life, just the way you look at it. That's all. It means you can be free anywhere, even in a sick body, even without a job, even without a partner in life, even when you have no money. If you're content to be there, then you are free. Doesn't matter how austere a monastery is, you are free when you're happy to be there. That is the secret of freedom. That was the prisons of life. Any place you don't want to be, that's your prison. You don't need to change the prison. Just change the way you look at it, and your prison becomes your freedom. Nelson Mandela did that, 27 years in jail. Other people do that. I do that in my monastery. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. Somebody comes up and says, "Ajahn Brahm, get in the car, you're going to give a talk at Manjushri school." They say, "Ajahn Brahm, get in the car, you're going to give a talk on the radio." "Ajahn Brahm, get in the car, you can go home now and have a rest." I just do what I'm told, that's all. That's why I feel free. I'm content no matter whatever happens. What about money? Have you got enough money? I'll finish off with telling you how to be rich. Do you want to be rich? This is how to do it. When I was a young monk, I was not allowed to have any money whatsoever. That's why those people who give ang paos, I don't receive it myself. Someone receives it for me and it goes to my monastery. It builds my monastery, my monk factory. but I don't get anything out of that whatsoever at all. Even my robes, you see the robes? Even though I'm a famous monk now, I don't wear lame robes. My robes are not made by Gucci. My robes are just the same robes any other monk wears. But now and again, there is an allowance in the monk's rules of discipline. If I've really helped somebody, and they said, Ajahn Brahm, I want to give you something for you, not your monastery, something personal. You really, really helped me. Can I give you something? What you can do, you can say, Ajahn Brahm, this is actually what happened in Thailand many years ago. I'd helped someone, they said, look, I really want to get something for you. I've got 100 baht here. Now 100 baht was like Thai currency, worth only about $5. 100 baht here. What do you want for 100 baht? What can I get you for that amount of money? Usually they actually say the amount of money, so you know exactly what you're doing. And at the time, actually, I was quite happy. I didn't want anything. And I said, actually, I can't think at the moment. I said, can you come back tomorrow and I'll let you know? So they said, yeah, actually, I'm coming back to the temple tomorrow. You think about it. I have 100 baht here because you really helped me. Let me know what you want for 100 baht. So I went back to my room and I started thinking, what do I need for 100 baht? And I started thinking of one thing, and then another thing, then another thing. In about 10 minutes, 100 baht was not enough. And I tried to take some of those things off my list, but they were really important. And I just couldn't take them off the list. In another 5 minutes, even 1,000 baht wasn't enough. And these were really essential items, things I really, really needed. And I realized what was going on. When you had some money, it was never enough. And so I actually screwed up that piece of paper. I threw it in the bin. When he came the following morning, he said, never do that to me again. Before you told me that, I was so content and happy. Now you made me get desire up. As a monk, I want for nothing. I want for nothing. Nothing is what I want. If you want nothing, then you're someone who wants for nothing. Then you're at peace, then you're content. It really taught me about how to be rich. Was it 100 baht or 1,000 baht or 1,000,000 baht or $1 billion US? Do you think that will make you happy? Someone will put their hand up and say, I'll give it a try. It doesn't make you happy. If you have 1 billion, you want 2 billion. Look at Mr. Gates. He still has to work hard every day. Poor fellow, he can't take a holiday. Whatever amount of money you have, it's never enough. When you have contentment, whatever you have is more than enough. Haven't you got enough already? If you haven't got enough, again, you're in prison. Because you're not happy to be here. If you think, today I've got enough. I've got a wonderful partner. I've got wonderful children. I've got a wonderful country of Singapore. Even I've got a wonderful cancer who's teaching me the Dhamma. What a wonderful thing this is. I've got wonderful experiences. My wife has died, but it was so wonderful knowing her for all those years. What a wonderful thing life is. Then you're content. Then you're free. Then you know happiness. Because the Buddha said, happiness is the end of craving. Now I've just taught you what the end of craving was. Thank you. While we're waiting for someone to ask their questions. You know the old story which I tell every time? To get people to ask questions, the Buddha talked in one of his sutras about karma and rebirth. In particular, why some people are born beautiful in their next life while some people are born ugly. Do you want to be reborn ugly?
No.
No. But actually the Buddha said the causes why people are born ugly, why some people are born beautiful, why some people are born into rich families while other people are born poor. In particular, the Buddha taught why some people are born intelligent in their next life, while other people will be reborn stupid in their next life. The karmic cause of stupidity in your next life is not asking questions in this life. Now, who wants to ask a question?
Very good.
There, we got someone who's intelligent in the next life.
It's always very difficult to ask a question. I want to ask you about, understand the minds and the bodies. When you do in a certain meditation in jhana state, the mind and body can be separated. So in Ajahn or Buddhas, when they sleep, is still, the body is resting, is his mind is still mindful during the sleep?
Okay, you're asking a technical question when, like a Buddha goes to sleep, is his mind still mindful? And also you mentioned, like in the deep meditations of jhanas, if you want to find out what those mean, that's what I mean by meditation is better than sex. I never actually went to the full extent of happiness which you can get in life. The more contentment, the more letting go you do, the more happiness you feel. The more content you are to be there or to be here. This is not a simple teaching. This is the essence of meditation, essence of letting go. The happiness builds and builds and builds to immense levels until you do get a pleasure better than sex. It's one of the reasons why I became a monk. If you want to know what the pleasure better than sex is, come to the global conference. Now, what happens to a Buddha when he goes to sleep? When a Buddha goes to sleep, he goes to sleep. Like anybody else. The point is, he's happy to be there. He doesn't make a big problem out of it. And even once, he went to sleep once during the middle of the day. And they have this figure in Buddhism called Mara, this being who tries everything to stop people becoming enlightened. And he came up and saw the Buddha sleeping and said, "Aha, caught you out. You're not really enlightened. You're just taking it easy. You're sleeping. Why are you going to sleep? You should be working for the happiness of all sentient beings. You're being lazy." And the Buddha replied, "I'm going to sleep for the sake and benefit of all sentient beings." That was a powerful answer. He was sleeping for the happiness of all other beings. The Buddha was living in a physical body which needed to eat, which needed to sleep. That's just what we have with the body. And the Buddha was resting so he could serve others with greater efficiency later on. He rested. When we rest the body, even enlightened beings have to rest so they can serve with greater efficiency later on. That's why all great monks would rest. They take time off in their meditation or they go and have a sleep. Tonight when I leave here, I'm going to go back to my room and I am going to sleep. If I snore, I don't care because I'm not listening. Yeah?
I'm still not very clear. Then is the mind also sleep beside the body?
When the body is sleeping, then the mind stops temporarily. And then when you wake up, the mind starts again. That's all it is. Very simple, but actually simplicity is very profound.
Venerable, I have a question for you. Can you explain the basis of reincarnation out of the context of Buddhist teachings?
In the context or out of the context?
Out of the context.
Well, what reincarnation is, I was actually telling somebody who was driving me here today. There's one of our people who spent the whole day driving me from appointment to appointment in his old car. And I said, his car has made so much good karma today, it's probably going to be reincarnated as a Rolls Royce in its next life. I don't know if that's what you mean about reincarnation outside the Buddhist context. That's all I can think about. There is such a thing that people get reborn. There's There's recycling, where material gets recycled. It's like reincarnation. You've got nature recycles all the time. There's a constant flow. Things arise, they live for a while, and they go back to the earth, and all that earth gets reincarnated as new trees. There's even the mind, the stream of consciousness is always changing. It flows from one thing to another. Always reborn every moment, every day. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? I've been reincarnated again. Here I am again. One of the first things I say when I wake up, I say, good morning. Do you say good morning to yourself? Yeah, good. Say, good morning, me. Here I am again. Have a nice day. Because I like myself. I'm kind to myself. Who's the last person you see before you go to sleep at night? You. You're the last person you're aware of before you go to sleep. So just before you go to sleep, say, good night, me. Have a nice sleep. You try that. You have a much better sleep, and you have a much better day, instead of saying, here I am again in the morning, I've got to go to work again. Oh my God. Be happy to be there. And then when you're happy to be here, then you're free. So say good morning to yourself every morning. Say good night before you go to bed, or before you go to sleep. And then that's reincarnation outside the Buddhist context. I don't know if that's what you meant, but that's all you're getting. You better be content with that.
Hi, I got a question. If you are a giving person, we compromise your self-interest. How we should manage between self-interest and being a giving person?
Okay, you're talking about being a giving person, being generous and kind to others, and also being a giving and generous and kind person to yourself. Now, this is the thing, that we don't just look upon ourselves as being separate from others. As we give to others, so we should give to ourselves. And giving to yourself is a very important thing in life. But what should you give to yourself? You don't give yourself money. You don't give yourself an ang pao and say, here, I'll make you merry with myself. To give to yourself means give yourself a moment of peace. Give yourself time to rest, to pause on your journey through life, and to enjoy the view from where you are. So grant yourself moments of peace. Also, give yourself forgiveness. Don't be so hard in your judgment of yourself. Be giving in compassion to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Give yourself kindness. If you grant yourself peace, if you give yourself kindness, if you give yourself tolerance, you become a very happy person. When you give yourself all of those things, you'll have more than enough happiness, compassion, and peace. You'll be able to give compassion, peace, and happiness to others as well. How can you give those things to others when you don't possess them, when they're not yours? So give yourself those things, and you'll have so much to give to others. Giving will always go both ways. Give to yourself as you give to others. Give to others as you give to yourself. Be kind, be generous, be forgiving. And that way you know what giving really means. And then it's not the point that you seem to be giving, and you're not getting anything back in return. When you're not getting anything back in return, you're forgetting one of the most important people in the world is you. Too many people are kind to others, but they're not kind to themselves. We can forgive others. We can't forgive us. We can love others, but how many people love themselves? It's not just saying the door of my heart is open to you. Come in. Freedom is also, and I said this before, but this is, if you just want to know the heart of all religions, the heart of truth, the way to happiness and peace, is being able to say to yourself, in the privacy of your own thoughts, me, whatever I've done, whoever I am, the door of my heart is fully open to me. Come in. Allow yourself to come in to your own heart, to be one with yourself, with your life, to be at peace with all of you, with your faults, with your mistakes, with your successes, with your beauty and your ugliness. To say, all of me, the door of my heart is fully open. Becoming at peace with oneself is giving unconditional love to oneself. That is the greatest gift you can give to yourself and the greatest gift you can give to others. The gift of peace. And then no one is exploiting you, and you're actually giving so much to others because you have so much to give, only when you're at peace. I hope that answers the question. It was a very, very good question. Thank you.
Simple question. How do you deal with a person who is so content with life that he fails to see that there are problems in his relationship with others?
How do you deal with others who have got problems in life?
No, how do you deal with a person who is very content with his own life, very content with life in general, that he fails to see that there are actually problems in his relationship with other people?
Oh, okay. That's not contentment, that's stupidity. Because we can have false contentment, that's just laziness. Like real contentment, you don't have any problems at all. Real contentment with yourself.
What I mean is that he thinks that there is nothing wrong with himself or herself. He's very happy with the person that he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
If he thinks he's happy with the person he is, and he causes problems to others, he's actually in denial. Because when we cause problems with others, we know that there's something wrong there. I cannot live by myself. Even though I could spend 6 months in solitude, not seeing anybody else, I depend upon others. We have like a web of relationships. And if I see other people unhappy, then I am unhappy. It is just the nature of things. One monk once put up his hand and he said, a hand has 5 fingers, and if one finger gets hurt, the whole hand can't be used. And so every finger in this hand have to look after each other, so the whole hand can be useful. He said this is like a family, the big finger, the thumb, and the little fingers, the children, they all have to look after each other, so the whole family can progress. Because if one member of the family gets sick and in problem, the whole family is in problem. In your relationships, if you cause problems for other people, if you're just not seeing that, you're not being realistic. You're in actually denial. And what will happen eventually, your friend will actually have to be realistic to how he feels inside. He knows there's a problem there, but he fails to admit it. It is in denial, and denial cannot be maintained for so long. After a while, he realizes that he has work to do. One of the reasons I became a monk was this was a vehicle, not just for my own happiness, but so I could give happiness to other people as well. And whatever you're doing in your life, if you're not serving and giving to others, you're not a full human being. What life is, the meaning of life, in brief, is giving happiness to others and giving happiness to yourself in equal measures. That's why we serve, that's why we're compassionate. There's a human need to give to others. There's a human need for inner happiness. And after a while you find those two come together. When you give to others, you get happiness yourself. Happiness is serving others. You cannot be content when you're causing problems to others. You can think you are, but it's not true. Just after a while, your friend will come to the realization. Tell him to be honest. Tell him not to be afraid of truth. and honesty and truth, feeling he's accepted even though he's imperfect, will allow him to open up. When he opens up, he realizes what he's doing. That's what I would do. I'd be kind and try and open him up little by little. Unfortunately, they're long questions, but I'll give a short answer. I lost my mother 3 years ago. I dreamt about her a few months ago. In my dreams, she told me that she was sick. The dreams were so real. I woke up with tears in my eyes. She is a Buddhist. I am a Christian. How can I help her to rest in peace? Is it my bad karma that my child of 19 has suicide tendency? The child is a Christian who refuses all expert help. I was baptized as a Christian many years ago. Of late, I've been practicing both Christianity and Buddhism to ward off the suicidal attempts of my child. Have I committed a great sin for my lack of faith? What should I do? Okay, lost my mother 3 years ago. Dreamt about her a few months ago. In my dreams, she told me that she was sick. People who die are not sick, but sometimes they're unhappy. The only thing to do, if you have dreams like that which are recurring, if it's a single dream, it's not really important. If it's recurring, your job is to give love, loving kindness, goodwill to your mother, and then do some meritorious deeds, a donation to a cause. It doesn't have to be a Buddhist cause. It could be to your church, to a hospital, anywhere where it's making good karma, and then you share that good karma with the person who's dead. You share merits, and that way those merits, that good karma actually goes to your deceased relation. I've seen that happen many times. It works. So whoever said that, do an act of charity. Doesn't even have to be giving money. Just go and help at an old people's home. Serve, whatever it is, which is charitable, good, kindness, and then go back home and deliberately do a ceremony in your own words, if you like. I share the good karma of this act or these acts with you, Mum. May you receive the good karma. May that be conducive to your happiness and well-being. Answer question number 1. Is it my bad karma that my child of 19 has suicide tendency? It's not so much your bad karma as your child's bad karma. Your child is a Christian and refuses all expert help. Sometimes you have to use psychology to get such expert help. It's a big question. It's good to go to a counselor. If you're a Christian, just go to your pastor or whatever, see what he can do to help. Again, whenever anyone is sick or is in a problem, the hardest thing is actually getting to realize it's a problem. And once they realize it's a problem, that's the start of healing. And you sometimes need psychology for him to realize it's a problem. One thing you can do is if you get like some of, say, my tapes or other people's books on suicide, on positive attitudes, don't go and give it to him and say, listen to this. Leave it around the house. Just leave it, books in there, because people are curious. And because they're curious, they'll go and listen to it. Or if you really like it, you use reverse psychology, saying, this is my book tape, don't touch it. It's amazing how often that works. I was baptized as a Christian many years ago. Later I've been practicing both Christianity and Buddhism to ward off the suicidal attempts of my child. Have I committed a great sin for my lack of faith? What should I do? It's a common question because I'm very proud to say there's many Christians here, some Muslims here, I don't know, people of other faiths are here. You're most welcome. You don't have to be a Buddhist to go and listen to a Buddhist talk. You don't have to be a Christian to listen to a good Christian preacher. In the same way that many people in Singapore, they go and eat McDonald's, or they go and eat Thai food, or they go and eat to an Italian restaurant. Just because you're Chinese doesn't mean you can't eat Italian. So just because you're a Buddhist doesn't mean you can't go to a Christian and listen to a good talk from there. It's not a lack of faith, it's a great gain in wisdom. The future of religion in our world is that Christians are going to go to Buddhist temples and to mosques. Buddhists are going to go everywhere. Wherever you find a good teaching, you should go for it, listen to it. Why not? Religions of the future will work together. They have to work together because the alternative is absolute destruction. And no one wants that. We're doing it now. It will happen in the future. So you haven't lost your faith. You, whoever wrote that, are showing the way. Carry on. The only thing is, you've only gone to the Buddhist temple, and the Christian, you should go to the mosque as well. Next question. I am new to Buddhism, and there are some aspects that bother me. I need your kind advice. One is karma. There are two parts of my question about karma. A couple with a deformed child was featured on TV some time ago. Wherever they went, very often people would pass remarks that the child's deformation was a result of past karma. The parents were hurt by all his remarks. About a year and a half ago, my mum was diagnosed with cancer. She was well for a full year but her condition turned critical since January this year and has been worsening slowly. Again, I heard about karma. Some Buddhist friends said my mum, despite being a kind and gentle soul, must be living out her karma, and she would only pass on and be relieved from her pain until she has repaid all the past bad karma. I am confused. I would like to know whether all sufferings that are happening around us are inevitable due to karma. Could we always be so simplistic to dismiss everything as karma? Some things are karma, some are not. To tell you what I mean, I gave a simile. When I was a young man, I was traveling in Kashmir, still a young man, not a monk yet. The bus driver was a Muslim. It was a single-track road, a dirt track, going up and down the mountains. On one side was a vertical cliff going up, on the other side was a vertical cliff going down. When you looked out of the window on the downside, every now and again you could see a bus which never made it. And this driver was hurtling really fast around his hairpin bends. If anything was coming in the opposite direction, we'd be done, we'd be dead. So the few Westerners on this bus, there's about 3 of us, said, slow down. It doesn't matter when we get there, we just want to get there alive. And the Muslim drivers said, if it's Allah's will we fall over, it's Allah's will. That wasn't very reassuring. And then I started to think that if you were a Muslim, you would say that. If you were a Christian, you'd say it's God's will we go over. If you were a stupid Buddhist, you say it's karma. If you're a wise Buddhist, you say it's a bad driver. Now, does that answer your question? It's a bad driver. What are you doing now? So yeah, there may be some past karma of the past or maybe of this life, but do something about it. So you don't need to be a victim of karma. This is the heart of the question here. You're not victims of your past karma because you can always be doing something about it. One of the great stories of the Buddha was, if you've done some past karma, bad karma from the past, that's like a spoon of salt. If you put a spoon of salt in a cup like this, it makes the whole cup salty. But if you put a same spoon of salt in the whole swimming pool, you can't hardly taste it. The spoon of salt stands for the bad karma, the amount of water stands for your good karma. You can always dilute the bad karma from the past by making lots of good karma. There's always something you can do about it. So if you've been very naughty, if you've been bad people, you've got a lot of diluting to go. So be good. The second part of my question, during a conversation with a lady who runs a temple, I was told it was in the Dharma that women have more bad karma accumulated from previous lives. Hence, we are reborn as women who experience more physical inconvenience, for instance, childbearing and monthly menstruation. My three brothers also commented, perhaps as a way of shunning responsibility, that girls due to past karma that we owe our parents more. Hence, there are more girls than boys who would look after their aging and sick parents in order to repay what we owe. Is it true?
Ajahn Brahm, I don't think they understood a word of that.
Okay, the second part of my question. During a conversation with a lady who runs a temple, I was told that it was in the Dharma that women have more bad karma accumulated from our previous lives. Hence, we are reborn as women who experience more physical inconvenience. For instance, childbearing and monthly menstruation. My three brothers also commented, perhaps as a way of shunning responsibility, that girls, due to past karma, that we owe our parents more. Hence, there are more girls than boys who would look after their aging and sick parents in order to repay what we owe. Is it true?
Now I know why you read it so fast.
Someone has been conned. Look how many women come to Buddhist temples and go to churches. More women go to heaven than men. It's nothing about your past karma. Women or men, it's exactly the same. You've got a human birth. It's a wonderful thing having a human birth. So just the difference between women and men are just minimal. So it's not in the Dhamma that women have more bad karma than men. You've got exactly the same. It's just too much of a generalization. And it's not true that women have to look after your parents more. It's not just your sister's parents, it's your parents. So you have to look after them. And if you don't look after your parents, the karmic result of that is your children not going to look after you. There's an old bumper sticker I've seen in Perth. It says, always look after your children because your children are going to choose your nursing home. So be good to your children, and your children are good to you. Be good to your parents, and your children will be good to you. This is a long question here. I'm just going to do that much because it's unfair. Other people want to ask their questions. So some more questions now?
There's one question here. Why do we sometimes dream of our loved ones even though they've passed away a few years ago? Is there some meaning in it?
Okay, sometimes you dream about your loved ones just because you like them. You dream about what you like. I remember when I became a monk, I used to dream about fish and chips. It wasn't that the fish and chips I used to eat have now become ghosts. It was just I liked them, that's all. Being a monk. So you're dreaming about things you love, and of course they will come up. You think about them during the day, you'll dream about them at night. That's all it is. Next question.
Is there heaven and hell after death?
Is there hell after death? There was a story of a samurai who wanted to find out, is there really hell and heaven? And he'd asked monks, just monks like me, and they said yes or they said no. How can he find out for sure? Even if I said yes, can you really believe me? So he went to this old monk and he said, is there heaven? Is there hell? And this old monk said, you're too stupid to know either. And this was a samurai, they're proud people. He said, don't call me stupid. I can call you whatever you like, you oaf. And the samurai put his hand on the sword. If you don't watch your language, monk, I don't care who you are, I'll chop your head off. You could even slice the head off a mushroom. And he got out his sword and he said, don't play with me. And the monk said, what are you taking that rusty old piece of metal for? And the samurai was so proud and so angry at the insults which this monk was throwing at him, he got out of his sword and was about to strike off his head when the monk said, that's hell. Anger, that's hell. And the samurai understood. At last, someone is actually teaching from direct experience, because to hate someone and be about to kill them, that is hell. And of course, he was so grateful for such teachings. He put his sword away. At last, he'd found someone who could teach him direct from the heart. And he bowed to that wonderful monk. And the wonderful monk just smiled at him as he was bowing and said, and that's heaven. That's a wonderful little story. So if you don't want to go to hell, don't get angry at your husband. Be kind and be grateful, do good things, and you know that's heaven. And you know that if such places exist, if you get angry and mean and spiteful, that's where you will go, that's where you belong. If you're kind and generous, forgiving and gentle, if there is a heaven, that's where you will go. Because your mind will find the place where it belongs.
Why did the Chinese believe that when a person dies, he returns on the seventh day to visit his loved ones?
Okay, when a person dies, sometimes they get reborn straight away. Wise people don't hang around. What do you want to hang around for anyway? Unless you want to scare somebody. Get your own back at those people and go, ooh. So a lot of people get reborn straight away. Some people hang around for a while because they want to make sure that their family are all happy and at ease. When you die, what are you worried about? You're worried about the people you left behind. And so a lot of times that people stick around because of you. You won't let them go. You're crying, you're upset. And if somebody died, you really like, if you're the person who died, you're really concerned about your family, make sure that everything's okay. So sometimes you hang around until the funeral, and after the funeral is done, then you can go away, you finish. Or you can hang around a bit longer if you wish. Sometimes it is 49 days. One of the stories I tell, true story, this lady, disciple of our monastery in Thailand, died. She died of cancer. I knew exactly the time she died. I was one of the monks doing the funeral service for her. Sometime later, her father came to the monastery. He was really upset, or not upset, but shocked. So what's happened? And he said, last night, or rather that morning, at the breakfast, they all sat around on the floor having breakfast, in a big family, maybe 12 or 13. One of my other daughters said, I had a strange dream last night. That person who died, my sister, she came up to me and said, I've been here long enough now, I'm taking my leave. And as soon as she said that, everyone else's jaw dropped. Because everyone in that family, including him, the father, had exactly the same dream that night. They all had the same dream. When there's about 13 people in the family, they all had the same dream. That's more than a coincidence. So he came up, he took the first bus to my monastery, and he said, what's going on? I said, obviously, she's going to take leave. And as soon as he went, I got out the calendar, because I knew the day she died, and I knew it was roughly about 49 days. I counted the days, exactly 49 days. There was one case where the lady had waited 49 days before she decided to go. Sometimes they stay longer. Sometimes they want to go, but the plane is delayed. There's all sorts of reasons, but roughly 49 days. So if your relation or loved one comes back after 7 days, they're just still hanging around, just to make sure everything's okay. So if they do come along and say, Mum or Dad, whoever's passed away, everything's fine, no worries at all, you can go now. Yes?
Good evening. Actually, it was said that that is going to be a good, happy occasion or something like that. How about suicide case?
Okay.
Aren't they taking an easy way out, and what is the follow-up of that decision?
Okay, when people have done a suicide, they've died with a bad state of mind. So because they've died with a bad state of mind, in depression, just trying to run away from a problem, they find as soon as they have killed themselves, they're still there afterwards. So, their consciousness still survives, they're still there, they still know what's going on. And so they've tried something, it hasn't worked. So that's actually why they are even more depressed at that time. And many suicides stay around as ghosts. And so it should be the job of, whether it's monks or other people, to reassure them and give them heaps and heaps of forgiveness. Because they feel so guilty that they've hurt other people. They've hurt their loved ones. Because it's very hard, because suicides are unexpected, usually very young people, and it creates an enormous amount of pain for their loved ones. So the people left behind, as quick as you possibly can, forgive the one who's committed suicide. Do some sort of ceremony. Look, we forgive you. You made a mistake. Everyone makes a mistake. We forgive you. Whatever was the problem there, see if you can let go. Teach them some good teachings. Then hopefully their spirit will learn from the experience, grow from it, and never repeat it again. Even though they're dead, they can still hear. That's why we do give sermons to the dead. They're still listening. They can still understand. And with a bit of a good advice, they can actually heal their pain and move on. That's the only thing you can do. But the thing is to forgive, don't blame. And when a person dies like that, sometimes we just think of ourselves, our hurt. Oh, you've just ruined my whole life, I committed suicide like that. Or sometimes it's guilt, sometimes shame. All those negative emotions, please don't complicate things with shame or guilt. It happens to everybody. It's not the parent's fault. It just happens. It's part of life. So when it happens, no guilt, no shame. See if you can heal your own pain so you can give forgiveness to the person who's hurt you. So they are free to go on to a new life. It's the only thing you can do. Okay. I don't know, does that answer the question? It's a very deep question. You can give a whole talk on suicide. Yeah?
How do you differentiate a ghost from a person?
How do you differentiate a ghost from another person? Sometimes the ghost just disappears. Or sometimes you know it's somebody who's died. You look at them and think, hang on, I did your funeral yesterday. What are you doing here? Because sometimes they look exactly the same. Okay, I'm going to tell this story because I think when my monks come next week, they're going to give a story on ghosts. One of the nicest ghost stories, a true story which happened in Sri Raj Hospital in Bangkok, maybe some 20 years ago when I first heard this. Sri Raj Hospital is probably the biggest hospital, or was at that time, in Bangkok. A doctor was just finishing work early one morning. He was on night shift. And he was going in the elevator down to the ground floor to get into his car and go home. And there was a witness to this, because there was a nurse in the elevator with him. Now, one thing I should let you know to understand this story, you know that in Buddhism sometimes we tie strings around our wrist, lucky strings. In Thailand, if somebody dies, they tie a red string around your wrist. Before they had these plastic tags, a red string would always be tied around a corpse before it got taken to the morgue. When they were going down, the elevator stopped at a floor. When the elevator doors opened, the doctor saw this woman trying to get into the lift. The doctor went white, shook, and just managed to press the closed doors on the elevator. And the nurse asked him, "What are you doing? That lady wants to get in." And the doctor said, "Didn't you see that red string on her wrist? That was one of my patients. She died early last night. That was a ghost." There was a ghost outside the elevator trying to get in. And at that, the nurse raised her hand. "I've got a red string too."
Okay, I got your point.
Now, that's a very rare and difficult situation when you've got a ghost in the elevator and one outside trying to get in. And this was a true story because that man actually fainted. The doctor fainted. And he was found unconscious on the elevator floor. When they brought him around, that's the story he told. Sure, that was true. The one outside the elevator was his patient who died. They checked his description of that nurse. She'd been killed in a road accident on the way to the hospital. The two were just recently dead ghosts. So when you're going in an elevator, always look to see if someone's got a red string. Sometimes that's the only way you can know.
Ajahn Brown, just now you were saying that when a person wants about to pass away, they sometimes can know themselves. So how do they tell? And how is it that when a person is about to pass away, especially in illness, they tend to recover before they actually go off?
Okay, it's an interesting, how do they know they're going to die? But people's minds are very sensitive to their own body, and they can intuitively feel that, my body's only got a certain amount of time to go. At the time of your death, there's an interesting thing happens. Again, those people who think it's very painful to die, or you're worried about giving your organs to other people because your organs are harvested from your body just before you die. You haven't fully died yet. Otherwise, if you died, your organs could not be used. But don't worry about that because in the last few minutes before you die, the body actually secretes, again, some endorphin compounds into your body. The last few moments, you do not feel any pain. I remember reading that in a story by Tolstoy. Before we had these drugs which get rid of the pain before you die. When you're close to death, you can put anything in your body, because you're about to die anyway, so it doesn't really matter about the toxic effects. You've got a huge number of drugs which can take away your pain. Before those drugs were there, people would be in pain until the last 2 or 3 minutes. And those last 2 or 3 minutes before death were always free of pain. So if you've got the drugs or you haven't got the drugs in your system, you should know it's been well known that the last few minutes before you die are pain-free. So you don't have to worry about giving your organs. You will not feel any pain at all in those last few minutes. You're making great good karma. It's not that if you give your lungs, your heart, your eyes, you're going to be blind up in heaven. You're going to have the most wonderful, beautiful eyes, even more beautiful than the top supermodel. Your heart's going to be just so wonderful. Your lungs, you could be able to run a 2-minute mile. You have such wonderful lungs. Whatever you give, you get back more than you give. That's a general rule of karma. So you don't have to worry about pain in the last few minutes. You're pain-free. What's the other part of the question?
No, my question is how do they know that they are leaving this world? Some of them, they will make preparation and they tend to leave words with their loved ones.
Yeah, again, when you get very close to death also, the only thing which keeps you going is your will to live. It's not just the body, it's the will to live. The mind is a forerunner of all things. And that's why sometimes people just give up their will to live and they can die then, or they can keep on going. It happens very often in my experience that someone is dying, they wait for Susan to come back from Australia where she's visiting me, and as soon as you go there, as soon as they've seen you, then they die. They can actually delay their death, just so they can see their loved ones, everything's okay. The will, the mind is very powerful. If you're about to, when your body is very weak, you're about to die, you can actually, 2 more days, I'll finish all the business, then I'll go.
I'd like to ask regarding about the meditation, is that advisable for a woman doing meditation truly have pregnancies?
For what?
Is it okay to meditate when you're pregnant?
Oh, it's great to meditate when you're pregnant. Many of my disciples who have been pregnant have meditated, and their child is the most wonderful, calm being. They don't wake up at night, they're very easy to look after. No, it's true. So all of you who are pregnant, get into a meditation course as soon as you can. It'll save you many sleepless nights.
I apologize, but I really need some advice from you. My mom is very sick, and she sees things, both non-living and living things. Are they indication that her life is coming to an end, and she is frightened when she sees things? How do I calm her down?
Okay, when people see things when they're very, very close to death, they can be real things, they can be hallucinations. Remember, when someone is dying, the whole chemistry of their body, especially of their brain, is getting very imbalanced. And sometimes the doctors are giving them very, very strong drugs. So you don't know really for sure, but whether it's real or it's not real, tell her to make peace with whatever they're seeing. It's not what they're seeing, but the way they're seeing it is the problem. So you don't need to be afraid of anything. You can make peace with anything. Give loving kindness, do your chanting, you've got nothing to fear, everything is going well. When you get them to a good state, a good mind state, whatever they see as friends, not enemies. And that way, they die peacefully.
Yes,
Question over
please.
there?
Ajahn Brahm.
Hello.
Actually, my question is also related to contentment. After hearing your talk, the first time you came to Singapore, I started practicing Buddhism, and I've been practicing contentment as well. But I need you to help me overcome my situation. Every time when I have everything, like what you said, I have a good house, I have a good wife, I have two beautiful children, and I'm happy with my work. But as soon as I sit in and I'm content about things, I start maybe not myself, like I mean other people as well. When we, in Singapore context, we are very busy with work, and when we start being content, I have everything, then it does affect a little bit of my work performance, and because I think, why must I do so much? And people can see, and I start, do the rat race again, and then my wife said, you better go for Ajahn talk again, and then maybe change. That's my real problem, and I do not know how you can help overcome situation. I think in Singapore, most of us are very busy with work. We try not to get content, even we know content is basically solved
I mean, we have our service to do to the world, but sometimes that service to the world, I mean, we are discontent. Not just Singapore, but the world is so discontent. We work so hard. And I think everybody knows that we cannot carry on around the way of just amassing more material wealth. Just the resources on this planet just cannot sustain this lifestyle. And especially when, that China, with so many billions of people, wants to have such a good lifestyle as the people in Singapore. There's not enough to go around for everybody, which means that we have to learn what's called sustainable development and to learn to be content with less, whether it's global warming or the environmental damages to our planet. Those are real things and they're real problems for our children especially. And we need to consume less. We need to realize that we don't need to live in a huge mansion. The only dwelling we really need, as I said yesterday, is 6 foot long, 2 foot wide, 1.5 foot deep. That's the only thing we really need. That's where we spend most of the time. Why do you need a house with so many rooms? When I was growing up, I was actually quite happy that my parents were poor. I had to share the room with my brother. I had to learn how to live together with another person, sleep in the same room. My father said that he even had to sleep in the same bed as his other brothers, because they only had one bed for 6 or 7 children. But one thing they learned then is how to live together in harmony and peace together. Now many people have their separate rooms. Even they have their separate TVs in the rooms. We don't need to learn how to live together anymore. Isn't that one of the reasons why we have an increase of divorces? More lonely people in our world? Sometimes in poverty, where we have less, there are many, many advantages. I was stunned by a report which was done by the London School of Economics some years ago. The London School of Economics, as you would know, is a very reputable institute, part of the University of London. They decided to have another means of assessing the happiness, the social wealth of a nation. They weren't just doing the gross national product. They had other factors, such as the divorce rate was a negative, their health, their happiness. They were trying to find out ways of assessing the happiness of a nation. And they came across with some criteria after many months of research and argument and discussion, and they applied it to every country in this world. Do you know which country won? Which country satisfied the criteria as the happiest country in our world? The country which stood out as the happiest country was Bangladesh. A poor country with very little infrastructure, hardly any money, but their family structures, their happiness, their contentment was so high that surprised everybody. When we talk about the developed world, what is the developed world? What's the suicide rate like in Singapore or in Australia? How happy are people? We may be rich. Are we really happy? Have we got our family values? We really love our children love us, they respect us. We have the warmth of fellowship and real love. Things which money can't buy. What is happiness? Sometimes the wealthy countries, we think we're developed. How many of you have been to the United States? The wealthiest country in the world, but honestly, is that a happy country?
No.
I say that is one of the most miserable countries I've ever visited. Other countries are far happier. What type of country does Singapore want to emulate? Fascinating question, isn't it? Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ajahn Brahm.
Okay, thank you.